We moved almost exactly 1 year ago. The very first night, we were exhausted as we laid down to go to bed after moving all day. My 4-year-old son was sleeping in his room for the first time. All of a sudden, my husband and I hear a loud scream. I made him get up and check on our son, but he was fast asleep. We kind of just shook it off and went to bed. Fast forward to a few months later, I was in bed sleeping when I hear, "Mommy!" It was right in my ear. I popped my eyes open, expecting to see my son standing there, but there was nothing. Again, I asked my husband to check on our son, and he was fast asleep. I got major chills because I know I heard a child say "Mommy." Months later, my husband was coming home late at night, and he hears from the darkness of the hallway, "Hi, Daddy." He wondered why my son was up so late and walks down the hallway to his room to find him fast asleep. A few weeks later, my husband was gone for the whole night. My baby is sleeping with me, as always, and my son decided to sleep in my room that night since Dad was gone. As I'm sleeping, I hear right in my ear, "Where's Daddy?" I pop up and look around, and no one is there except my kids who are fast asleep. Now for what happened 2 weeks ago. My husband claimed he saw a boy ghost in our hallway. I kind of giggled, but didn't take him seriously. He wasn't scared and didn't make a big deal of it, and just mentioned that he saw something, and I brushed it off. Then yesterday, I was fussing at my son for acting up at school, and I turned to leave his room and see a boy standing at the end of the hallway. It scared the living shit out of me. He was just standing there looking right at me. He was completely black and white, not see-through, almost like a photograph. Me and the kids went outside until I could stop shaking and get the courage to come back in. I asked my husband to describe what he saw, and it was the same boy that I saw. This is one of the scariest things to happen to me as a kid, and it has always stuck with me. It was about 10 years ago, and I was 9 years old. I had just moved back to California with my family. We were to be living with my grandmother in a cramped 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, and I was excited. My grandma was an older, pretty religious Filipino woman, a converted Hindu and faithful Catholic. I'm not sure if that's a contradiction because I don't know much about either religion. But her house had lots of shrines, candles, paintings of Jesus and Hindu gods, and this overall weird energy I could palpably feel as a kid. It's important to note that I now consider myself a very open person, someone who may unknowingly attract these sorts of occurrences. This may not be important to the story, or maybe so, I'm not entirely sure. But as a child, I would hear music and voices whispering to me, as well as smell strange things when triggered by certain words. At the time of this event, this was something I was used to and knew of about myself. Because of this, I had some interest into Wicca and the occult. Not as much as I would have later, because I was still a child, but enough to often sit on the floor of my aunt's dimly lit and cramped room and look at her books on witchcraft. I don't know when and why, but around that time, I began to have super strange, frequent, and all-encompassing thoughts of the devil and demons. Like, it would always be running through my mind, and I would comfort myself by remembering to recite some of the Hail Mary my mother had taught me. My aunt's room had a really creepy, suffocating feel to it, but I'd always spend time alone up there, even though I felt as if there was something watching me. I could place the energy coming from in front of her closet. My aunt is mentally ill and at the time was not on meds, so her room was filled with stuff. But especially the closet. It was always open about a couple feet or so, with lots of her things kind of stuffed in and falling out. And it was always pitch black on that side of the room, especially in the closet from what I could see. I slept up there with her and was so jumpy and afraid all the time that I couldn't even shower by myself. One night, my aunt goes out and my mother, my little brother, and I go to sleep on her bed. I remember I was so afraid, and I couldn't stop staring at this creepy green fairy thing that my aunt had hung from a string near her bed. It always seemed to sway, and I felt that when I looked in its eyes, it was sentient or something. I was in between my mom and brother, but sleeping the opposite way from them at their feet, staring at the space near the closet. I went to sleep, and in my dream, woke up. I sat straight up and felt such dread and fear I'll never forget. In the dream, I tapped my mom awake, and she looked at me in surprise. She said, "Ayana, you're bleeding." I then felt my nose and realized blood was dripping from it. Then my eyes, my ears, and my mouth. I got super freaked out and said, "Mommy, I've been thinking about the devil a lot." And something along the lines of how I couldn't stop and was really scared. But by the time I was done talking, she'd actually laid back and gone back to sleep. Then, in a moment of fucking horror, something was on top of me. It was dark, and I couldn't see, but I remember thinking it was a little white man. It was sitting on my chest with its knees on my collarbone, growling, hissing, making terrifying noises while it literally, and I mean literally, choked the absolute hell out of me. I was trying to flail my arms around, but I couldn't move. It lasted so long, and I remember thinking, "Oh my God, when will this end?" And then, as suddenly as that, I awoke for real. I was laying on my back, breathing heavily and feeling sore. In the same exact spot as the dream. Briefly I thought, "Oh no, is this real? Will it happen again?" So I lay in silence until I could muster the courage to turn and look at the closet. I felt absolutely horrified. The space was radiating the most intense, deep hate and evil. I will never forget. It has stuck with me for so long. I could just feel something staring at me so intensely, and also the sense that it knew that I knew it was there, and that we were looking at each other in that moment. I rubbed my mom's hip for comfort and laid back down. Immediately starting on a Hail Mary, I did it again and again until I could fall back asleep. For some reason, I also felt that whatever it was, left. I could sense it walking out of the room. When I woke up, I went to stand near the closet, and the space felt kind of empty. Anyway, I grew up and forgot about this story. I used to tell it to friends for a scary laugh, but I've just finished my first year of college and moved back here for the summer, so it's been on my mind. This wasn't the most frightening thing to happen in this house, so we'll see if any other future things happen. Hopefully not. Before I start, I want to make something very clear. I am not crazy. I have spoken to several psychiatrists and they all independently agreed that I did not fit the profile for schizophrenia or any other condition that would explain what I saw. I wish I were crazy. Then I could take a pill and pretend to ignore the things I see. Unfortunately, I am not crazy, and the things I saw then and see now are very real. When I was 6, I shared a bedroom with my older brother. I had been sleeping in my own bed for a while and was not prone to wetting the bed or having nightmares. For all anyone knew, I was a perfectly normal kid who had just finished kindergarten and looking forward to first grade in the fall. I could read easy books, and my parents kept me away from scary or mature books and movies. Now as an adult, I cannot think of a way the things I saw could have entered my little brain. I was asleep in my bed when a weight on my chest woke me up. It was unbearably hot and made breathing very difficult. I tried to push it off, but it would not move. And I could not move away from it. I was pinned down. I opened my eyes and tried to see what was on top of me. As my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I saw something I had never before or since in nature or fiction. Its face looked part human and part animal. Its eyes were human-shaped, but the pupils were X-shaped and did not move when its face did because it was staring right at me. Its skin was red, like dried blood, and bulbous at the forehead, chin, and cheeks, but shriveled elsewhere. Its body was about the same size as mine. I knew this because I could feel its warmth on my whole torso. I could only see its front legs buried under its head. 2 claws protruded from under its chin, each longer and thicker than an adult's finger. It smiled in a way that the corners of its mouth touched the bottoms of its eyes. It opened its mouth and made a sound a person mimicking a cat's meow while gargling water. I saw several rows of pointed white teeth. It twisted its head to one side and shifted its weight, as if it would reach forward and bite me. The shifted weight was enough that I could slip out from under it. I ran and jumped into my brother's bed and laid so that my brother was between me and the thing. I watched my bed, but I could not see the thing anymore. My brother woke enough to ask what was wrong, and I asked him if I could sleep in his bed. He said okay and turned over. I did not sleep for a while. Every sound and shadow made me jump. I must have fallen asleep because I don't remember the sun coming up. In the morning, I tried to tell my mother what I saw, but I did not have the words. My mother told me that it was probably the cat, to which my brother reminded her that the cat was outside all night. My mother was not impressed and told us to go make our beds. We went back to our room. When I pulled back my blanket, I started crying. The blanket had been burned in spots, like someone had left their cigarettes burning on it. Some spots were just browned, while others had burned down to the padding. My mother came in and saw my blanket. She must have assumed we were playing with the lighter and went to yell at my dad for letting us take his lighter. I was sure that the burn marks were from the thing's claws. I never saw it again. I have since named it the Imp. It was not the first of my supernatural encounters, but it was the first one that scared me.